Let's get into some of the names that we've come up with. This is, for me at least, I don't know how you went about it. This is not necessarily, I think they should hire this guy, and more, this is someone who I would want to talk to and interview at least, and I find curious. And I think this is different than defensive coordinator, where we talked about, I sort of think that they need a plug-and-play adult as the defensive coordinator. I want somebody with a little bit more creativity on offense. We can just go back and forth here.
Sure.
Do you want to go first?
You go
one
first.
at a time. I mean, the number one name on my list, I am trying to find somebody new, but the guy out there who I have to talk to is Eric Bieniemy.
Okay.
Now, I think it would be very funny if you go and hire Ron Rivera and Eric Bieniemy from this very terrible Washington Commanders team, but I mean, the numbers on Bieniemy are just wild. I mean, 5 years in Kansas City as the offensive coordinator, right? Never once in those 5 years below fourth in either success rate or EPA per drive. In 18, third in success rate, first in EPA per drive. Fourth in success rate, second in EPA per drive in 19. In 20, fourth and third. In 21, first and first. In 22, first and first. Now, you got Andy Reid, you got Patrick Mahomes. What is Eric Bieniemy like? It's impossible to pull out his value there. The year he's gone, this year, they dropped to 10th in success rate and 11th in EPA per drive. So there are lots of other variables, but I think that tells you something. Now in Washington, they went from 24th a year ago to 14th in success rate this year, and then they went from 27th in EPA per drive to 24th in EPA per drive. Not a great offense, but they had Sam Howell. There were hamstrings there. That is someone who has worked with a great quarterback before. There are, reports that he can be combative with the players. That's a dynamic you need to be aware of.
Maybe they need that.
I feel like I would not be doing a service to the organization if I was looking for an offensive coordinator and I did not talk to Eric Bieniemy.
I'm with you there. As you can see, he's the
Number
top
one on your list? Okay.
He's the top. Well, I didn't necessarily rank them, but yeah, he's the first name I have here. And you do need to look at those Washington numbers, but you also need to put the Washington numbers within the context as well. I would absolutely speak to him, and he fills the void of established play caller, right? Like, the job's not too big for him. He's done it. He's had success. He's worked with high-profile players. Like, if he's in the room with Jalen Hurts isn't in charge of him. Like he's been in the room with Patrick Mahomes. So that should bring you credibility. It's not like he has the job because of Jalen Hurts here, right? I do like him, and you do need to consider the context of the Washington situation. He also has a slight background with the Eagles too. He played in Philly, so there's a background with Jeffrey Lurie, perhaps. I'm going to go down off the board here, or I would imagine guys you might not have on yours, so there's not a crossover. Joe Morehead. Okay, Joe Morehead. Do you have him?
He was in consideration for my fifth name.
Joe Morehead, now the head coach at Akron.
I think it's okay for me to say that I texted Coach Flynn to see if there are any names on his mind. He said Joe Morehead is one of his favorite play callers.
Yeah.
So there you go.
So Joe Morehead, who is the head coach at Akron now, formerly the head coach at Mississippi State, was in the offensive coordinator. He was the head coach at Fordham. He was the offensive coordinator at Penn State when Saquon Barkley was there. He was the offensive coordinator at Oregon, and he's Bruce Feldman, who there's few reporters I respect more than Bruce for The Athletic. He has a piece where he says NFL teams are going to be looking at Joe Morehead, and you can understand why, because when you watch his offenses wherever he's been, they're creative. They blend the RPO game with the West Coast system game. If you see what Joe Brady's doing with the Bills right now, what Joe Brady did with the Panthers, he was fired prematurely by Matt Rule, frankly, but he had a lot of success at LSU as well. He uses the concepts that he learned from Joe Morehead when he worked under Joe Morehead at Penn State. So also, I should add, when you see what Todd Monken's doing with the Ravens, that's a guy who, similar to Joe Morehead, had been a college coach, had been a college coordinator, is a veteran type. Joe Morehead's definitely someone that I would speak with.
Okay, I'm interested in that.
By the way, I was going to start this exercise if I went first. I was going to say Chip Kelly, okay, and then I was going to say Matt Patricia, just for kind of the laughs of it, right? It's
good.
Matt Patricia has offensive coordinator experience, right? And then Chip Kelly would always be first.
One of
on
the
my
best
list.
candidates out there, Matt Patricia.
Yes.
He's going to have a lot of opportunities.
He's got a lot of opportunities on offense and defense.
Yeah, exactly. He might get hired as both. Like the Shohei
Just be a head
Ohtani of
coach
the
at that
coaching
point.
staff. Yeah. All right, I got another one. I have a couple guys on here who you're going to know more about than I am.
Okay.
But this is the second person on my list of two so far who once played for the Philadelphia Eagles, and that is G.J. Kinne.
Oh, okay. I like this.
G.J. Kinne, who was the head coach at Incarnate Word and then went to Texas State.
Yep.
Known for being a creative offensive play caller. Looked a little bit at the numbers. Texas State went from 21.1 points per game, which was 111th in the country, to 36.7 points per game, which was 11th in the country in 1 year under G.J. Kinne. Went from 325 yards per game to 457, 6.0 yards per attempt to 8.3, and 3.3 yards per carry to 4.6. Supposedly runs sort of like an up-tempo, spread out type offense. He was in the Eagles building for a year, even post-playing career as like an analyst before he went into coaching. 35 years old. That's a guy I want to talk to.
Yeah, close friends with Lane Johnson. Rising college head coach, like GJ, always found him smart. He can view the game from a quarterback's perspective, but he actually played other positions too for the Eagles too, right? So I've only heard good things about GJ. Coach's son, who this is kind of what he's always wanted to do, and the success is there at the college level from a young age. Like worked up. He was an offensive coordinator at Hawaii. Yeah. Then he was the offensive coordinator at like Central Florida. He kept moving up the system. I like that. That's a good one.
Okay.
In a similar vein, let's stick in college. Okay. I'll take your G.J. Kinne, and I'll give you Will Stein.
Ooh, I had Will Stein on
You
my
had
list.
Will Stein.
Yeah,
Really?
Well, he was one of the other guys in contention for my number 5.
So Will Stein, 34 years old. He's never worked in the NFL. Will Stein, by the way, is Oregon's offensive coordinator. Now, I want for full disclosure here, I
win Will Stein's money.
I wanted to push you on more from Michigan. I'm assuming that he's either Michigan's head coach or I'm assuming he's Michigan's head coach next year, to be honest with you. But the Oregon offense, when I watched them this year, and I watched them quite a few times, was really impressed with them. Will Stein was in his first year there. Then you look at the numbers, both traditional and the advanced numbers. They were number 1 in opponent adjusted efficiency this year in college. You look at where they were in terms of top in passing yards, completion percentage, sacks allowed, first downs per game, scrimmage yards of 10-plus plays. They ranked number 2 in scoring offense and total yards per play and fewest turnovers. And then you say, all right, well, he did this with Oregon's offense, right? They had Bo Nix, who was out of his mind. Now, he was part of that.
What happened to him?
Oh, okay. Bo Nix, he was
very good.
Outstanding.
Okay.
He was efficient this year.
Break.
He was efficient this year. Just really, an outstanding season. They had Troy Franklin. They had a lot of good players, right? Bucky Irving.
And that was just his first year on the job.
First
Oregon,
year,
right?
yeah.
Yes.
So, but then you look at the year before that, he was at Texas San Antonio. Texas San Antonio is not filled with the top players in college football. Well, they were number 9 nationally in total offense, number 12 in scoring offense, number 12 in passing offense. They scored 30-plus points in 12 of 13 games and 40-plus points in 7 games when he was there in his last year at UTSA. So this is all a way of saying, and by the way, this isn't I don't want to say like a gimmicky offense. This is an offense that combines RPO concepts with a lot of like pro concepts, although the pro game has a lot of RPO concepts now too. But I was really impressed with that Oregon offense. Them and Michigan, where I thought were the 2 best offenses I saw in college football this year. And 34, I know never worked in the NFL, but if you think ideas work up, he is someone I would speak with. I see A.J. Walker in the chat saying Oregon was extremely efficient offensively. That's why I said number 1 in opponent adjusted efficiency in college football.
Now we presume Brian Grubb, who went with Kalen DeBoer from Michigan, from Washington to Alabama, is probably not on the table, right? Is that we assume he's gonna take this chance at Alabama and do that first?
I would imagine so. He's kind of been with DeBoer all throughout. He wanted that Washington job, but Yeah, that would be my assumption.
Okay, so we'll leave him off the list for now. I'm going to give you another former Eagle, Zach.
Okay.
I'm going to give you a former Eagle who worked with Nick Sirianni.
He's on my list. First name there. Worked with Sirianni. Yep.
And that is Gerard Johnson, another 35-year-old who is the Houston Texans quarterbacks coach.
Yep.
Was the Colts offensive quality control coach for 2 seasons, overlapping with Nick Sirianni. Then he went to Minnesota to be the assistant quarterbacks coach for a year, and then was C.J. Stroud's man in the building with him this year. Has had the exposure to the Shanahan Bobby Slowick tree this season, so would be able to teach that a little bit. And there is a relationship, presumably, with Sirianni. So I think that's a player that is on my list for, or a coach, rather, who's on my list for Nick to talk to.
Yeah, Houston native, close with Quincy Avery, who's worked with Jalen Hurts. So there's a Jalen Hurts connection there. You might say, this sounds like Brian Johnson, last name Johnson from Houston.
We went from, you could go from BJ to GJ, or you could go from Brian Johnson to Gerard Johnson.
But if you're curious about that
maybe
49er,
go from Brian Johnson to Brian Greasy.
If you're curious about that 49er system, if you're curious about the fact that he played in the league, that he worked with Sirianni, that he played quarterback at a high level, there's that he's been exposed to a lot of different offensive systems. Was with Kevin O'Connell. He checks a lot of boxes there. The reason I asked you before if the play calling matters is because, are you prioritizing someone who has the play calling experience, or are you going for someone who could be the next big thing, who in a year from now is the way people are talking about Bobby Slowick? And that's the only question there, but there's a lot on that profile that you like, and you can't argue with the success that C.J. Stroud has had this year.
Okay, over to you. So
I'll kind of stick to a similar theme there in terms of a quarterback's coach. This one does not. This one has play calling experience in college, although maybe not to the same success, and that's T. Martin.
T. Martin, another former Eagle who was also on my list.
T. Martin, who was the offensive coordinator at USC for a period of time, got stripped of his play calling duties there by Clay Helton, but things kind of went south with Clay Helton. But he was a rising coach in the college ranks, came to the NFL. He was a wide receivers coach, now a quarterbacks coach. He's now in this Todd Monken system. Lamar Jackson's had a lot of success with him. Previously, he was in that Greg Roman system, right? Which I think, say what you will about what it is in the passing game, tremendous run game concepts there too, right? So you're kind of blending these different ideas together. The work with Lamar Jackson cannot be dismissed. You can think that people can improve as a play caller. You can't just take that short time at USC and say this is exactly who he is as a play caller. He's been exposed to a lot of different ideas since then. I would be very interested in picking up from that Baltimore staff. I think they're always well coached. They're sound. The game plans this year have been spot on under Todd Monken, and he has high level college experience. They won a national championship with him at Tennessee. Peyton Manning never did. Peyton Manning's replacement, T. Martin, did. So he'd be someone I'd be interested in speaking with.
Yeah, I think that's a good one. I like that. All right, my next one, number 4 for me. I'm sticking in the NFL here, and this is not someone who has been exposed to a bunch of different systems. This is someone who has been in the building with Sean McVay for the past 5 seasons. This is Zac Robinson, the former journeyman NFL quarterback who has worked his way up the Rams staff. He is now the passing game coordinator / quarterbacks coach, which is what he has been for the past 2 seasons, 37 years old. I have a memory of Zac Robinson when he was coming out of the draft, coming to the Eagles facility for a pre-draft visit. They didn't draft him, but I remember the chatter around the building about how handsome he was.
That was the chatter?
Yes, I remember that.
What circles are you in where that's the chatter? Here's a guy who was a successful coach, a successful player at Oklahoma State. He's here for his job. I mean, when...
Now, to be fair, this was the chatter from the women who I was talking to, but I didn't get to see him, but I believe. I'll take a look at him. He's a handsome guy.
Yeah.
I'm comfortable enough, Zach, to acknowledge when somebody else is handsome.
You know,
You don't have to be so pent up,
it's
protective of your masculinity.
It's not protective of my masculinity. It's a matter that shouldn't factor into the way you talk about someone or think about somebody.
Why?
Yeah.
D'Amico Ryans took that handsomeness all the way to a complete turnaround in Houston. Maybe Zac Robinson could do the same for the Eagles.
Perhaps. Okay, so you got Zac Robinson as your handsome candidate.
Yes,
Yeah.
I do. And I also think this is the guy. There has been a lot of turnover with that Sean McVay staff over the past couple of years. This is the guy who has been there all along. And I think I would, again, without knowing everything about him, this is someone who I would want to talk to.
He just needs to buy an H.
That's good. I thought you said buy NH, like he has to buy New Hampshire.
No,
What is that?
buy an H.
Yes, I agree with that.
Yes, he spells his name Z-A-C. That's the joke there.
Yes.
So I'm going to go with Cliff Kingsbury here.
Oh,
Okay.
interesting.
And-
interesting.
Look, Cliff Kingsbury.
Now, here's a guy who thinks that he's handsome, but is actually not.
You don't think Cliff Kingsbury's handsome?
He is nowhere near as handsome as he thinks he is.
Zac Robinson does it for you, but Cliff Kingsbury does not.
Correct.
Okay, I just want to get that on the record. Cliff Kingsbury, who is, say what you will about the way it ended in Arizona. His offenses had a lot of success. Arizona finished top 10 in offensive yards in 20 and 21.
Talk about another guy who never had a plan B.
Top half of the league in points scored in each of his first 3 seasons. When Kyler Murray, in Kyler Murray's 3rd season working with Kingsbury, 2nd in completion percentage, 7th in QBR, 8th in passer rating, 11th in adjusted net yards per attempt. Kingsbury had success at Texas Tech offensively, had success with the Cardinals offensively. I don't think his team's problems were that they couldn't move the ball. That last year was problematic. Things did not go well with the Cardinals. But he spent last year in USC's building working with Lincoln Riley. He has experience in an offense that Jalen Hurts thrived in college, that Jalen Hurts kind of had a career renaissance in college. So you take that background. Now you have Jeff Stoutland as your run game coordinator. We're assuming Jeff Stoutland's back, right? Jeff Stoutland's revered in that building.
If he wants to be back, he will be back.
So the run game concepts were never a strength for Cliff Kingsbury. Well, what you're hiring him for is the play calling feel and the passing concepts, and now you blend that together with Jeff Stoutland's concepts, and you have a pretty good thing going.
Okay.
Gavin would rather have Bo Wulf as the OC than Cliff.
So would I.
Okay.
Objectively. I think my last one. This is one where I've got this full list. I would want to talk to every single one of these people. There are a couple weird ones on here. What do you know about Cortez Hankton, Zach?
The wide receiver.
Yes,
Yeah.
former Jaguars wide receiver.
Yes.
He's been the passing game coordinator and wide receivers coach for LSU the past 2 years. They had the best offense in football this year. He was the same job with Georgia for the 2 years before that, so there might be some overlap there. Never called plays. I'm not going to give him my spot here, but that's a guy that I would want to talk to. Let's see what Cortez Hankton knows. I think my last one, and this is against type. This is not the up-and-comer, but this is someone who has had the play-calling job, lost his job, and I'm curious to know what it was he was doing the past year, if he has any refreshing ideas. And that is Byron Leftwich, who obviously came over with what's his name from Arizona? I'm blanking.
Bruce Arians.
Okay. And then won a Super Bowl with Tom Brady, and then lost his job last year. And they brought in Dave Canales, who did a good job with that Bucs offense. But Byron Leftwich, a guy who has played quarterback in the NFL, can meet Jalen Hurts on that level. Has worked with Tom Brady. I think Jalen Hurts could respect that, and has maybe some downfield passing concepts that could help the Eagles, search for explosive plays.
So Joe Brady, so to add to that there, I see what you're saying. I mean,
Yeah, I don't have to.
I like Byron Leftwich when he was the coordinator at both those places. Byron Leftwich, I liked watching him at Marshall. I liked. I
Like when they were carrying him up the field.
I met him when he was with the Steelers.
Oh yes, you and Byron have a storied past. I forgot about that.
Not a storied past.
I hope they hire him just so you can bring this up in the first press conference. Tell everybody the story. He's an enemy of the pod. I forgot.
He's not an enemy of the pod. I did not mind it. Byron Leftwich,
This was a dick move, actually. I'm going to take him off my list.
No, I have great respect for
I'm going to go
for
Pete
Byron
Carmichael instead.
I have great respect for Byron Leftwich.
No, so much respect that you spelled his name
Byron
wrong.
Leftwich. Also, a DC high school
More
legend.
like Byron Sandwich.
A DC high school legend, I should add as well. But I walked into the Steelers locker room. This was 2011. It was actually this week in 2011. I remember that vividly. And I was covering the Steelers Jets postseason, and I was at the Star Ledger at the time, and I was doing a story. I was doing a few stories from the Steelers locker room, and I walk in and I ask Byron if he can speak to me, and he says, he said to me, "There's a height requirement for this locker room," which it was just playful banter, right?
But he didn't know you.
He didn't know me. It was playful banter.
I think that's a dick move. Byron, you're gone.
No. He ended up giving me a really good interview, so I appreciated that. Enjoyed speaking to Byron then, and I respect his coaching since then.
Okay.
Also, an interesting sliding doors. It kind of sounded at one point like he could have gotten the Jaguars job when Doug Peterson got it. That he was like a higher candidate, but he did not want to work with Trent Baalke, was the rumor at the time. And so maybe Doug's post-NFL career or post-Eagles career is different otherwise.
How about Jason Vrabel, the Green Bay Packers wide receivers coach and passing game coordinator the past 2 years? That's an offense I'd like to borrow a little bit from.
Yeah, LaFleur can coach.
Yeah.
So
38 years old from South Park, Pennsylvania.
Okay. That's out by Pittsburgh, I believe.
Okay.
The last one from me here is Joe Brady, I should say, is not officially the Bills' offensive coordinator for next year. We assume he'll keep that job, but he's technically
probably free to interview.
Yeah, he's technically the interim. The Eagles interviewed him as a head coach before they hired Sirianni, right? You met him on at an airport layover.
I didn't meet him. I was on the same plane.
On the same plane, the airport layover. Joe Brady, I was really impressed with what he did with the Bills this year. I was really impressed with him at LSU, of course, and then, like I said, I thought Teddy Bridgewater did fine in that year he coached him. I would talk to him. But speaking of people the Eagles interviewed before they hired Sirianni, Kellen Moore. Kellen Moore had a lot of success with the Cowboys. Now Dak Prescott had a really good year after Kellen Moore left, and the Chargers didn't have a good year this year. So maybe some of that shine went off, but known as a really smart play caller. And I would at least be interested in speaking to him, a young ascending coach.
We all silly like the mayor.